Guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to check out another figure. Since there are just so many Mattel figures hitting stores right now, I figured why not throw up another review today. So we've got the Yangchuanosaurus. This one was also a figure that I was getting a lot of requests for, so I figured I might as well get this one up sooner rather than later. But you can see again that it's definitely another fun looking figure. I think the majority of the figure is really nice, but the tail is the one really big issue I have with this figure, because we usually get smaller than average tails on our Mattel dinosaurs, but the tail of this Yangchuanosaurus just seems unreasonably short, even shorter than your average Mattel figure, and just small. It just doesn't look good as far as the tail goes. But as far as the box art and everything goes, you can see it's all your standard when it comes to the Dominion line. And then when we turn the box around, you can see a sneak peek of the action feature, as well as the Quetzalcoatlus, which will also be up for review, and then of course the DNA scan code up there on the back. So let's go ahead, pop this out of the box and check it out. And here is our Yangchuanosaurus, and it's definitely a really nice sculpt. And I think now having it out of the packaging, you can definitely see again what I was talking about as far as the tail length goes. Like, of course, the proportions in general aren't really all that accurate on the dinosaur. The majority of the figure, I feel like, has some, obvious proportion issues, but the tail just for some reason looks so off to me because it is really short, first of all, and then when you look at the massive size of the dinosaur, like, the tail just decreases in size so quickly, so the appearance of the tail, I think, looks really awkward due to the insanely short length. Now, there is a little bit more length because when you look at it from up above, there is a curve in the tail, which kind of makes it look here, from the side like it's a little shorter than it is, but even with that curve, that tail is still massively short, and I feel like is definitely the biggest problem with this figure overall, because outside of the tail issue, I think the sculpt is phenomenal, and we have some really nice paintwork as well, minus the fact that we don't have painted nails as usual. But again, the tail thing is the only really big issue I have with it. Other than that, I definitely am very impressed so far. So let's go ahead, jump straight to a closer look, and check the entire figure out right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, one thing you'll probably take notice of right away is how insanely vibrant the detail is of this Yangchuanosaurus. And you can see that those scales are incredibly nice to look at. They just absolutely jump off of the sculpt. Very, very nicely done as far as the detailing standpoint goes. And you also have some really nice paintwork here for the figure. You have a beautiful tone of green. You have some nice dark browns that kind of splotch down and really, take over the entire upper side of the head, and then you have a nice light green for the underside of the dinosaur in the lower jaw there. You've also got a yellow eye with a black pupil. Nice to see the actual black pupil. It is perfectly placed and no sloppiness at all as far as that goes. You also have some beautiful reds up here on the top of the dinosaur, and I think the detailing up there looks very nice as well. And again, everything sculpt wise really does look very good on the Yangchuanosaurus. If you look inside the mouth, you can see the tongue is sculpted out very nicely in there. Maybe not quite as textured as we're used to when it comes to different Mattel releases, but overall the inside of the mouth looks pretty nice. One thing that I'm noticing though is there's not really much of a gloss coat in there, maybe slightly, but you usually see a pretty strong gloss coat on the inside of the mouths of Mattel figures, and we don't really see that here on the Yangchuanosaurus. The teeth are also very nicely sculpted as you move along. You can see they are painted with kind of like a light yellow, so it adds a nice element of realism, I think, to the figure overall. You can also see the eye is painted very nicely over here, so that as well is a plus, because sometimes you get a really nicely painted eye on one side and then a horribly placed eye on the opposing side, but that is definitely not the case on this incredibly nice looking Yangchuanosaurus. As you continue to move back here into the dinosaur, you continue to see those browns here run along the back of our dinosaur. You have a very unique appearance to the top of the head, as we have almost like a sort of like sail-like look to the back here, kind of poking up in certain areas. It's like a ridge line, but it's a very unique look, I think, for the figure. You can also see some osteoderms and stuff here pretty much littering the entire side of the neck, starting right here behind the eye area and then running down the course of the upper side of the neck. As you move down here, you can see again the scale detail is insanely nice looking. You also have some hanging skin here in the throat region of the Yangchuanosaurus, and one thing that is really nice to see is that this light green doesn't end right here in the lower jaw. You can see it continues to run down the course of the underside of the figure. As you continue to move down, you have another area of kind of like a ridge just popping up here, but it's like all alone. Well, there's actually technically like two, but just another little area where there's really just that one isolated kind of like ridge area, and then you also have some more of like the osteoderms and stuff poking up here. And again, some more of that nice brown coloration that kind of leaks down. You can see it splotches in a few different areas. The scale detail is still looking phenomenal everywhere you look. And I like how they have some really subtle, like variations of brown picking up in certain areas. That's one thing that I noticed not long ago on T-Rex figure that they had released. But you can see as you move down here, you can again see more of the really nice scale detail. Another area of like those bumpy osteoderms running down the course of the arm. You can see the nice elbow there. You can see some nice muscle definition as well. You've got a beautiful hand sculpt as you move down here. Nice scoots down the fingers. But yet again, no nail paint. We really need nail paint on these figures, especially one of these like larger, a little bit pricier figures. Like, it would be really nice to have nail paint. I think it would just make a huge difference. And then moving back up here into the body, again, that scale detail is honestly incredible looking. Look at that. Absolutely gorgeous scale detail on this Yangchuanosaurus. You can see a little bit of bulkiness to the stomach region as well, so it looks like a pretty healthy version of a Yangchuanosaurus. As you move up here into the back, you can see very large and fairly small osteoderms galore. It's pretty much an osteoderm party up here. You can see more of that almost sail-like look here. Again, like a very, very small, just barely out of the back, sort of a sail type of a look that they have going on here for the back of the dinosaur. Very interesting, very unique take. I'm not really sure what exactly they were going for when it comes to that appearance, but I think it looks cool because it makes the figure look very different than many others that have come before it. As you move down here into the thigh, you can again see more of those like random splotchy browns picking up. Just a ton of osteoderms and stuff here running down the course of the leg, as well as again the insanely nice scale detail. This is one figure that would really benefit from a nice dark wash. You've got the kneecap right here. You also have the calf muscle, very nice and bulging. Some more osteoderms back there. As you move down into the foot, you've got a really nice looking foot sculpt, beautiful looking scoots down the toes. And again, the scale detail is incredible looking. Unfortunately, no nail paint down here either, but we kind of sort of have like a slight gloss coat to them, but not really. Like, the gloss coat isn't something that I really see much of at all on this figure. But we can see that there is a dew claw present back here, which is also a plus. And then we move back up here. Again, as you lead out into the tail, you can see that the brown just kind of disappears, like it tapers off completely right past the hip. We have a few little areas of the kind of splotchy brown showing up. If that would have been a little bit more abundant, I think the paintwork would have looked a lot better out here on the tail, but due to the lack of that being out here, it kind of takes away from the figure, because now it looks like the second half of the dinosaur isn't really painted, and you can see that we have that nice light kind of like yellowish green here on the underside. That as well disappears right there after the groin. We do have, again, some more of those random browns, which I do love that they've been doing that, because I think it really does make the figure look a bit more realistic and lifelike. But again, the lack of paint out here on the tail does take away from the figure, and that tail is just, it's honestly like an eyesore, I feel like, because the figure as a whole is incredible looking when it comes to the sculpt, but then once you reach that tail, like, it really just takes so much away from the figure overall. We do have the scan code, which I feel like is fairly well hidden up here on the back of the dinosaur. Like, it's not too bad. I have a hard time sometimes getting these out. There we can see the Jurassic logo here on the back, so the actual code is on the opposing side. There is the code if you would like to add this one to your collection, but you're not really going to see too much difference over here any more so than what we had just seen on the initial side. You can see again that the paintwork looks very nice. As you run through the course of the figure, you've got some beautiful detailing, honestly, on every side, every area of the Yangchuanosaurus. It is just gorgeous when it comes to the detailing aspect, and quite possibly one of the most vibrant looking sculpts that I think Mattel has released yet when it comes to how really, really vibrant the detail is. And then the only difference really, of course, the arms are posable. That's up to you where you put them, but you can see the leg over here is trailing, whereas the leg on the opposing side is definitely leading. But other than that, there's really not much difference that you're going to pick up over here than what we saw on the initial side. Definitely a fantastic sculpt and an awesome species to enter the Mattel Jurassic World line, but the tail being so short is honestly like the biggest gripe I have with this figure. It's actually driving me insane just seeing how insanely short that tail is. As far as articulation goes on the Yangchuanosaurus, you do have the articulated jaw, which works pretty nicely, also part of the action feature. You also have articulation in the neck right there, so you can kind of move that head around, which I believe is also potentially part of the action feature. Not positive. It does go up and down a little bit. You can see it definitely has a little mobility as far as that goes. You have the arm articulation forward and back, as well as out away from the body, even though it was a little stiff. And we also have the midsection articulation here, which can kind of move around up and down a little bit, also part of the action feature. Then we have the leg articulation, which is fairly workable, but it's not that smooth. It's a little jerky. It's not that smooth at all. And I believe we also have ankle articulation. Yes, something we don't always see on the Mattel figures anymore. And then, of course, the tail articulation, which can move all over the place, but also is part of the action feature. Then you've got a button up here where you can go ahead and have your jaw snap on the Yangchuanosaurus and then operate that kind of, thrashing action feature for the dinosaur with the tail back here. This is not an action feature that's brand new, not something we've never seen before, especially when it comes to the Mattel line, but it does work really nicely, and I definitely am a fan of it. I feel like it's a pretty darn nice action feature for a theropod. As far as a size goes, in the length department, you are looking at about the 14.25-inch range, or around 36 centimeters. And then for a height in the position that it's currently in, you can, of course, change this if you would like, but you're looking at just shy of about 6 3/4 inches, or right around the 17 centimeter mark. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line in comparison to our Yangchuanosaurus. And you can really see that even though it does have a really short tail, it also does sport a very impressive size overall. It's much larger than every figure that we see here. Being, one of these massive action figures from Mattel, that is no lie, it definitely is a massive figure. And then for another comparison of a similar sized figure, a similar style of figure from Mattel, we have the Suchomimus that they had released prior next to the Yangchuanosaurus, which it always amazes me just to see how many incredible figures we've had from Mattel, just looking back and seeing that we've had a Suchomimus, two Suchomimus actually in the past, but again, here in comparison to the Yangchuanosaurus, you can see they are a very similar size. And for another size comparison, we also have a Kenner Young Rex right here next to the Yangchuanosaurus. You could definitely see an obvious, very large size difference, as well as the Mattel Extreme Damage Velociraptor, a few different figures we've been using for a lot of Mattel comparisons lately. We've also got a Hasbro Jurassic Park 3 Ceratosaurus here next to the Yangchuanosaurus. And then one final comparison is everyone's favorite Ankylosaurus. We have the adult Roarivore or Roaratack, I forget which one that one was. I think a Roaratack Ankylosaurus here next to our Yangchuanosaurus, yet again showing you that the Yangchuanosaurus is really quite massive. So this brand new massive action Yangchuanosaurus from Mattel for the Jurassic World Dominion toy line is a really nice figure. It just really suffers from the short tail, and now we've had plenty of figures in the past that have had really short tails, like one for instance that's a major one would be the Allosaurus. They've repeatedly released Allosaurus figures that almost always have had very short tails, like the Battle at Big Rock version specifically has an incredibly short tail, but I never really thought it was quite so off-putting than when I've seen it here on this Yangchuanosaurus. And the detailing of the figure as a whole is incredible. Probably one of the nicest sculpts from Mattel, in my opinion, as far as the fine detail goes, and just how insanely nice it looks on the figure. It really is a fantastic sculpt overall. Everything looks great on the figure. very nice, very unique looking take on a Yangchuanosaurus, and I feel like it definitely is a standout figure when it comes to the sculpt as well as the paint job. The paint job is very nicely done. I love the tones of color they've chosen for the figure. It looks really nice and natural. All of the application of the paint looks great, and I'm loving this new thing that Mattel seems to be doing where they kind of allow like some random coloration to almost be applied like a wash, where it's really subtle hints of it here and there through the course of the figure, because it allows some color difference in a nice natural and realistic way. So I'm definitely a big fan of what they're doing as far as that goes, and I hope they continue to do that moving forward. The only downsides as far as the paintwork goes, in my opinion, is the fact that we don't have that darker brown there running out onto the tail. I feel like the figure would have really benefited from that darker color running out onto the tail, and we don't have nail paint as always when it comes to Mattel. You would expect it on some of these larger figures just because they're, larger, more impressive figures, but no, we still don't have nail paint regardless. As a whole, it has some nice articulation and a really cool action feature. The action feature isn't anything amazing. It's one we've seen prior, numerous times, but it's still very nice and works great on the figure. So there are definitely some ups, there are definitely some downs, but as a whole, I'm a really happy camper when it comes to this Yangchuanosaurus, and definitely a figure I'm very happy to add to my collection. So if you are interested in picking this up, I would say run to your Target and grab it there right now, because the Jurassic World Dominion line has officially dropped today, and my Target was overloaded with Jurassic World figures, so you should have no problem finding it there. And make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.